It deals with serious and often distressing incidents. If you feel at any time you need support, please contact your local crisis center for suggested phone numbers for confidential support. For a more detailed list of content warnings, please see the show notes for this episode on our channel. The Screams in the Dark. It was a windy Sunday night, October 6, 1974. Two Queensland police officers drove along forested roads toward the Carnival Youth Camp on the Toowoomba Range. The camp caretakers greeted them, visibly flustered. For the past half hour, their peaceful surroundings had been disturbed by a frightening noise. The officers listened. A few minutes later, they heard it for themselves, blood-curdling screams. For the first time in Officer Ian Hamilton's career, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. The difference in pitch indicated at least two women were screaming for help, but the mountainous terrain and blustery winds meant the origin of the screams kept changing. 1 minute from the top of the range, the next from the east. After 40 frustrating minutes of helplessly listening to distorted screams echo around them, everything went quiet. The officers drove up and down the range. They stopped. Lorraine Wilson, 20, grew up on a farm outside Dubbo, New South Wales. The youngest of 4 children, she followed her mother into nursing, a compassionate animal lover who valued hard work. Wendy Evans, 18, grew up in Sydney's inner west. Also one of 4 children, she shared Lorraine's strength, empathy, and determination. The two met during live-in training at St. George Hospital in Sydney. They became close friends, excelling in their studies. In late August 1974, after completing their first year, they embarked on an interstate bus tour visiting Townsville, Mount Isa, Darwin, and Alice Springs. The trip ended in Dubbo at the Wilson family farm. Then they set off in Lorraine's Volkswagen Beetle for the final leg, an 800-kilometer road trip to Brisbane. Halfway there, the car broke down. A mechanic said repairs would take a week. On a tight budget, the friends reluctantly decided to hitchhike. Their first ride went well. A friendly man even bought them burgers before dropping them at Wendy's sister Susan's home in the Brisbane suburb of Camp Hill. They spent 6 days exploring Brisbane. By Sunday, October 6, they were ready to head home to be back at work by Thursday. Lorraine's car still wasn't ready. Given their positive hitchhiking experience, they decided to try it again. Susan urged them to stay or take a bus. Wendy considered it, but Lorraine was confident. Wendy reassured her sister, "I've got Lorraine to protect me." When the young women failed to arrive in Dubbo, Lorraine's mother Betty felt in her bones that something was wrong. But she told herself they must have made last-minute plans. It was only when both failed to appear for work on Thursday that they were reported missing. Lorraine and Wendy hadn't told anyone their exact route. No concrete starting point. The investigation was like searching for a needle in a 900-kilometer haystack. Lorraine's parents hit the road, retracing steps, showing photos, speaking to media. Reported sightings came from across the country. None could be verified. Neither woman had touched their bank accounts since the day before leaving Camp Hill. The Wilson family remained hopeful. The Evans family grew less optimistic. Wendy's mother Alice told reporters, "I now feel the situation is hopeless for my daughter. I just want to know where she lies dead." Friday, June 25, 1975, nearly 21 months after the disappearance. An elderly couple went for a leisurely drive to Murphy's Creek, about 30 kilometers northeast of Toowoomba. They turned down an unsealed dirt road, parked near a split rail fence, and began eating lunch. A wallaby hopped past. They decided to follow it. They scaled a barbed wire fence into a wooded paddock. After passing through a cluster of trees, they found a small clearing, a makeshift rubbish dump. Clothing, cosmetics, bags, personal belongings strewn about. Then, one of them noticed a human skull. The couple rushed back to their car, flagged down a passing police officer, and led him to the site. He found 2 human skulls and other bones. Among the belongings, a transistor radio with a name engraved on the back, Lorraine Wilson. Police uncovered the mostly intact skeletons of Lorraine Wilson and Wendy Evans. Wildlife had scattered some bones, but the bodies had initially been dumped side by side. The killer made no attempt to hide them, likely assuming the remote spot, obstructed by trees at the rear of a 2,000-acre farm, would never be found. Both women sustained fatal head injuries, possibly from a large piece of timber found nearby. Lorraine, struck on the back of the head 3 times. Wendy, multiple extensive injuries, her face described as bashed to a pulp. Remnants of a thin looped synthetic cord showed both had been hogtied. Their jeans and underwear were still in place, bra straps fastened, the cord tied over their jeans. If they had been sexually assaulted, it likely happened sometime before they were killed. 90 personal items were found, everything they'd been carrying from Brisbane. Only a few things were missing, both wallets and 2 bank books. But jewelry remained, including Lorraine's prized jade green ring and a gold bracelet. An army officer with a metal detector found one item that belonged to neither woman, a man's silver signet ring with a large green stone. Had the killer lost it or left it behind as a clue? When Officer Ian Hamilton heard about the discovery, he immediately thought back to October 6, 1974, the night he heard 2 women screaming on the Toowoomba Range. He checked his records. The date matched exactly. Investigators concluded the screams came from Lorraine and Wendy. They were likely killed the same day they left Brisbane, but the case soon connected to something larger. Between 1972 and 1975, several other young women had gone missing while hitchhiking in the Brisbane and Gold Coast areas. Robin Hoynville Bartram, 18, and Anita Cunningham, 19, last seen in Coolangatta, July 1972. Robin's body found shot twice near Charters Towers. Anita's never found. Michelle Riley, 16, and Gabrielle Jenke, 19, October 6, 1973, exactly 1 year before Lorraine and Wendy. Both bludgeoned to death after hitchhiking to the Gold Coast, sexually assaulted. Margaret Roseborn, 17, May 1975, beaten so ferociously dental records were needed for identification. 7 young women, all hitchhiking, most bludgeoned, most sexually assaulted, bodies disposed of relatively out in the open. The public dubbed the unknown perpetrator the Gold Coast Hitchhiker Murderer. Was it one killer or something else? Part 7. Witnesses and Missed Opportunities. A bus driver reported seeing 2 women matching Lorraine and Wendy's descriptions sitting on Ipswich Road near the Oxley Police Academy. A faded light green EK Holden pulled over. They got in. 2 men inside, driver with shoulder-length fair hair, passenger with an afro. Another witness, Anthony Doherty, was parked near the Oxley Hotel that same day. He overheard 2 young women arguing about accepting a ride. The shorter one, presumably Wendy, was reluctant. Her friend said, "I'm going, whether you come or not." She walked to a green Holden with a white top. Inside, a young male passenger, around 20, dark hair, round face, a silly grin. Another male stood outside, tanned, dark medium-length hair, a tattoo on his upper arm. The shorter girl eventually followed her friend into the back seat. The Holden sped off. Anthony called police. The sergeant told him he must be mistaken. Investigators believed the girls were heading towards Sydney, not west. He didn't take a statement. A local musician drove down Murphy's Creek Road every Saturday night for weeks in September-October 1974. Each week, he saw a light-colored 1964 EH Holden parked not far from where the bodies would later be found. Officer Ian Hamilton knew that car well. Over his years as a traffic cop, he'd pulled over a similar Holden multiple times. He remembered its distinct chrome wheels and the way it sat low at the front and higher at the back. He'd issued defective tickets after noticing there were no interior door handles or window winders in the back seat. He told detectives everything he knew. According to him, no record was ever made of that meeting. That kept emerging belonged to 2 interrelated families from Toowoomba, the Hiltons and the Lorrys. Local police knew them well. Alcohol abuse, domestic violence, run-ins with the law. Some members had a habit of picking up teenage girls for sex, whether consensual or by force. They would grab them off the street and throw them into the boot or back seat of cars. Survivors described that handles and window winders had been removed from the back doors to prevent escape. The group also threw alcohol-fueled parties in the bush, including at Murphy's Creek. Key members included Wayne Boogie Hilton, 19 in 1974, violent, reportedly kept a tire lever under his front seat as a weapon. Alan Shorty Lorry, turned 22 on the day of the murders, labeled a psychopath. Once punched and stomped on his own mother and bit his father's ear off over a fight about a sausage. Donald Lorry Allen Ungi, Lorry Desmond, Hilton, Jimmy O'Neill, Larry Charles, took his own life in 1993. Kingsley Hunt, the designated driver, wore a white pest control uniform. Multiple witnesses over the years had told police to look into this crew. No action was taken. Brian and Velma were driving down the Toowoomba Range in early October 1974 when they saw a pale green Holden with a white top skidded at an angle. Both passenger side doors were open. A man was throttling a young woman, trying to force her inside. About 20 meters away, another man marched a second young woman toward the Holden, pinning her arms behind her back. The woman looked directly at Brian and Velma and screamed, "Help me! Oh God, help me!" Velma ordered her husband to stop. He slowed. In the front seat, they could see two other men and a third woman. They had their 3-year-old daughter in the back seat. Fearing for her safety, they kept driving. They passed a payphone but didn't call, afraid the men would drive past and suspect them. The next morning, Velma reported the incident to an officer she knew. The officer wasn't concerned. There had been no news of any assaults or missing persons. When Lorraine and Wendy's bodies were discovered, Brian and Velma were convinced they had seen something significant. They reported it again. The same officer looked into their claims and determined that hospital records for their sick daughter didn't match the alleged timing. Their account was dismissed. Years later, Detective Paul Rouge showed Brian a photo lineup of 16 men. Despite over a decade passing, Brian confidently pointed to Wayne Hilton. When Neil asked why, Wayne allegedly said, "Did you see the picture of our cars in the paper? They're right on to us. You would have heard about the nurses being murdered a bit over the range. Me and the brother done that." Wayne explained the nurses had gotten away from them and gave them a bit of trouble. He said he was afraid of getting caught. When Neil asked why he did it, Wayne responded, "Full of piss and bad manners." Desmond Hilton recalled a morning in October 1974 when Wayne Hilton and Donald Lorry were drinking at his house. A light green EH Holden pulled up carrying Alan Shorty Lorry, Jimmy O'Neill, Larry Charles, and Alan Ungi Lorry. They revealed they'd given two girls a hiding down the bottom of the range. Shorty bragged and demonstrated how they kicked and stomped on the girls. Desmond agreed to clean their car, scared to say no. Across the back seat was a light smear of blood, as though an injured person had been dragged across it. Wayne and Donald then went back to the range to check on the girls. When they returned, they had blood on their hands. Years later, while sick in hospital, Donald Lorry allegedly told a friend, "We killed the nurses. I was there. I didn't do it." He implicated Wayne Hilton, Angie Lorry, and Shorty Lorry, but also said 3 or 4 carloads of people were involved. When asked why he hadn't gone to police, Donald replied the others would have killed him if he had spoken up. Larry Charles was once seen crying, completely out of character. He allegedly said, "It was 2 years today that them girls got killed at Murphy's Creek." He confessed that he, Wayne Hilton, Shorty Lorry, Donald Lorry, and Jimmy O'Neill picked up Lorraine and Wendy, took them into the bush, where more arrived. Everyone except Larry allegedly took turns raping and bashing the women. The next morning, Wayne and Shorty picked up a big stick and just wailed and wailed into them. Norma was preparing dinner alone at her home on the Toowoomba Range in early October 1974 when she heard a panicked woman's voice at her back door. A young woman with light brown hair stood there. She begged for help. She had just been at a party with a group of people she wanted to get away from. She had escaped from their vehicle. Norma offered to let her wait inside until her husband returned. But the woman became frantic. She said the group had her friend and they were going to kill her if she didn't go back. Norma offered to call the police. The woman declined, saying, "I better go." Norma returned to her kitchen. Then she heard a loud scream. She rushed to a front window and saw a car outside. The same woman was struggling with a young man with long, wavy dark hair. He struck her across the face as he forced her into the back seat. A second young woman was already inside, struggling with another man. Norma's husband pulled into the driveway. He had witnessed the struggle, too. He told Norma, "It was probably just a domestic." 2 weeks later, Norma saw a newspaper photo of Lorraine Wilson and Wendy Evans. She immediately recognized Lorraine as the woman at her door and Wendy as the woman in the back seat. She wanted to call police. Her husband warned her not to get involved. The memory haunted Norma for years. By the time she finally contacted police, after moving interstate and seeing the case on Australia's Most Wanted in 1989, she identified the women from photos. But whether anything was done beyond that is unknown. Lorraine's brother Eric later said, "My sister was standing in front of a woman who was the same age as her mother. She was looking for a mother's protection. She got nothing. She was on her own." For almost 40 years, no one was held accountable. Lorraine's mother, Betty, wrote to the coroner shortly before her death, asking for a new inquest. She died 3 days later, from a fall in her garden, without seeing justice. Public pressure mounted. In April 2013, a new inquest began. For the first time, the 7 primary suspects were publicly named: Wayne Hilton, Donald Lorry, Alan Shorty Lorry, Alan Ungi Lorry, Desmond Hilton, Jimmy O'Neill, and Larry Charles. Kingsley Hunt was named as a person of interest. The coroner heard from witnesses, some reliable, some questionable. Many who had made damning statements in the past backtracked or retracted. Those implicated denied everything. One witness, Kim Sandicock, gave powerful testimony, claiming a woman named Ellen confessed to her in a pub in 1984, describing the murder in graphic detail. But by 2013, Kim was on morphine and claimed she couldn't remember Ellen at all. The court didn't believe her, concluding she either witnessed the crime herself or was covering for someone close to her. In June 2013, the coroner delivered his findings. He concluded that Kim Sandicock's statement held the most veracity, aligning with the crime scene. Lorraine killed by a single blow, then a frenzied attack on Wendy as she tried to escape. He called the failure of bystanders to intervene the girl's last chance of survival, a result of the bystander effect and a victim-blaming mentality that let sexual predators operate freely in the 1970s. He stated, "It is more likely than not that Lorraine Wilson and Wendy Evans tragically stumbled into this putrid pool of miscreants and were killed by them." He named Wayne Hilton as responsible, but Wayne had died in a car accident in 1986. For the others, the coroner conceded there was insufficient evidence to bring them to trial. By then, Alan Shorty Lorry had died in a car accident, 2001. Larry Charles took his own life, 1993. Donald Lorry died from illness, 1994, allegedly making a deathbed confession. "We killed the nurses. I was there. I didn't do it." The surviving suspects, Desmond Hilton, Jimmy O'Neill, and Alan Ungi Lorry, walked free. Part 14. Aftermath. Outside the court, Lorraine's cousin told reporters, "I don't think they'll be able to walk down the street now and feel comfortable. Naming them has probably been the best outcome we could have." Lorraine's brother Eric said, "The mountain of fear that sat on my shoulders can sit on theirs now." A plaque in memory of Lorraine Wilson and Wendy Evans was installed at St. George Hospital in Sydney, where they had trained as nurses, hoping to help people. Just before her death, Lorraine's mother Betty remarked on the bitter irony. Her daughter had a particular interest in psychiatric nursing. "It seems the kind of people Lorraine wanted to help most," Betty said, "ended up killing her." Case status: open but cold. The Gold Coast Hitchhiker Murderer has never been identified. The Hilton-Lorry gang was publicly named but never convicted. Wayne Hilton, the only individual the coroner formally implicated, died before facing justice. Docket Unsealed. One file, one truth.